Welcome to another day in the Matrix, waters above crypto. I know it's been a rough start to the new year for cryptocurrency, but in my last video, I gave a warning for everyone to prepare for yesterday, January 5th, and downside targets of the low 40K area for Bitcoin, particularly the 43K area, to watch out for any downside due to all the connections that I shared with Gematria and Numerology. I wanted to make sure everyone was prepared a couple days in advance, and since then we've watched that all play out. So in today's video, I'm going to follow up on why we're not out of the woods just yet, and I'll be revisiting the decode that I shared in my last video as a recap to focus on what the rest of this week has in store for us and when to expect this market to bottom out and what are some of the price targets we can anticipate. Also, just a reminder, the new month has started on Patreon. If you've been waiting to join, you can visit patreon.com/watersabove to sign up for the Mastermind Community membership, and you'll get instant access to my exclusive Patreon posts, all of my weekly Red Pill episodes, which are my technical analysis podcasts. I go over a bunch of different altcoins on that podcast, and I also cover my market sentiment for the week. It's been 40 episodes so far, so it's amazing how long we've been running this podcast for. It's been incredible to watch how it's developed over that time. Also, by becoming a Mastermind Community member, you'll get access to our community Discord and also get live updates to see what I'm personally buying and selling by visiting patreon.com/watersabove to become a Mastermind Community member. So if you're new here, we do cryptocurrency technical analysis and combine it with Gematria, Numerology, and Astrology to understand these markets. Feel free to subscribe and turn on the bell notification to stay updated on when new videos come out, and make sure to give this video a like and share this channel with other conscious beings to help grow this community. And for those of you that want to learn how to do technical analysis and combine it with Gematria, you can join my Mastermind course. The link to my website can be found in the description box of this video and in the pinned comment below for access to the Mastermind course. And with that being said, let's take the red pill. So, the big connection that I shared in my last video about January 5th had everything to do with March 10th, 2020, and this date of 1/5, January 5th, and the 1/5 coming back to 15, which is the number of the new variant. So it is the 15th letter in the Greek alphabet, and I've been sharing this time and time again, and I believe that this will all connect to what's going on for the rest of this year, regardless of any new variants that come out. This is the one. And I've explained that through the numbers, this 70 and 15 connection, which I'll try to remember to bring up a little bit later. So one of which, another thing that had to deal with this date of the 5th of January was this little decode right here of small o, and this literally means small o, and o is the circle, and the circle is 360 degrees, and it was 360 days left in the year on the 5th of January 2022. Again, having 666 days connecting back to March 10th of 2020, which was the transition date of the World Health Organization declaring the pandemic. And the reason for this transition date being important is because when it is March 10th in the United States, it is March 11th in Australia, New Zealand. So it has everything to do with time zones. So whenever we're perceiving date numerology, we want to be considerate of the encroaching dates, the day before and the day after. So this would mean the 11th of March was the day it was declared officially. So the 10th and the 12th have everything to do with the energy that surrounds it. It works in threes. Okay. Think of it like Trinity, right? So anyways, this has come to fruition, and we've seen it bring the bearishness that I was expecting into the charts. Again, this 666 connection absolutely showing signs of bearishness through the numbers. So one other thing, it was obviously the connection to today, which is the big one, being that this was the official date that it was declared the pandemic, March 11, 2020, and this date being absolutely significant because the 3 times 11 is the 33 and the 2. So you have the date, the year numerology being 22 and the date being 33. And these 33s are massive with the elites. It's the main number in Freemasonry that we learn about. Of course, that's becoming more exoteric as time goes on, but we're starting to learn the truth of this number 33 through all the other decodes that I've shared in the past. So this being the lucky number 13 date numerology, it is not surprising that we're seeing, again, further bearish price action in the market. And what I really wanted to share about this particular day today, January 6th, is this number 49. So I just wanted to teach you guys a little bit more about this so you could learn. The 49 is massive in Judaism, the cult that essentially runs the financial system with the help of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuit order. Now, this 49 number is massive because it is the 7 times 7, or the 77, right? And this 7 sevens has everything to do with Shemitah and Jubilee. And I'm going to show you this really funny connection by the numbers. So we have 77, like I just said, it's 7 sevens is 49. And 77, of course, giving us 49 in full reduction. So it's amazing how you could even see that spelling out the numbers brings it all back with Gematria, with English Gematria, of course. So anyways, that was just a side note. The point here is that in Judaism, and I'll show you this really quickly, as I've shown before, you get that 77, and 7 sevens is 49. Of course, you also get 49 here. And that is 7 Shemitah cycles gives you on the 50th year Jubilee. Okay, and it's amazing here how you see Judaism giving us that 23 full reduction and Jubilee giving us 23 Chaldean, and that 23 Chaldean tying back perfectly to Bitcoin 23. And the way we perceive our numbers is 23, or 2 threes is 33. Again, going back to our friends, the Freemasons. Now, this Jubilee concept is massive this year because we are in the year of Platinum Jubilee. And that's something that I brought up before. It is the Queen of England's 70th year as queen. And that 70 connection comes back to the new variant because in Greek, isopsophy has the value of 70. And how many Commonwealth realms does the Queen Elizabeth II reign over? 15. Okay, so this 15 number and the sevens are massive every time we have a Shemitah year. And we are still in Shemitah until September of 2022. We have a lot of time to go, about 9 more months. All right, so this has been something that I exposed quite a while ago on my channel, probably going back to April or May. And we've been seeing this chaos in the world. And, you know, during Shemitah, we typically have 2 major things happen, one of which is financial, and the other thing is sort of having to deal with lifestyle, you know, how life will be like. And we could tell that the World Economic Forum and all this stuff going on with the Great Reset is definitely being pushed at this time. Again, one of the other small connections that I made in my last video was talking about the 5G rollout, this thing right here, and how that was allegedly going to be starting C-band spectrum waves on January 5th, which was yesterday. And again, another piece of evidence in that connection back to the 666, right? And today would have been the official start of it all, right? The full 24-hour date, again, tying back to the 666th day of the pandemic, which was declared by the World Health Organization. So this date and all of their connections, massive, you know, absolutely massive. One other number besides the Jubilee connection that I made, of course, 7 sevens gives you that 49, but we have the 359 days left in the year, and 359 is the 72nd prime number. So that 72 goes back to Bitcoin, right? And this is obvious by now that Bitcoin is the main energy of this market. So if Bitcoin has a big pullback, everything else will have a big pullback. And one of the other things that's amazing is this date of the 12th, the day that we had the huge crash in the market, that was the 72nd day of the year. All right. And when Bitcoin completely crashed down, we saw what it did to the altcoins, and I'm going to touch on that in a second. But the point is, with this 359 days left in the year, and that is the 72nd prime number, which just so happens to be landing on the 666th day since the start of the pandemic. Amazing connection, right? So let's get to March 12th because this has everything to do with tomorrow. And remember what I was saying about the sevens? We have 7 cycles of 7 is Jubilee, and we are in Shemitah, which is the 7-year cycle, and we are about to have the 7th day of the year, the Gregorian year at least, if we're following that calendar, which we should as part of our decoding. Now, this connection still being 666 because March 12th was absolutely important. It was the day of the big crash for Bitcoin and a lot of the stock market as a whole. Like we saw the indices pour poorly performing on that day, huge losses, record-breaking losses in some instances, and that was affecting the Dow, S&P, NASDAQ. But let's get to crypto because that's what's most important for us. Bitcoin had about a 38.7 or so percent drop, so about 38 to 39%, and this cratered the altcoins. We saw pretty much every single altcoin hit new all-time lows on that day of March 12th, and that's why I'm taking this seriously, right? Because, I mean, only like one exception was Ethereum. I think Ethereum made a slightly higher low, but it pretty much went right back to its 2018 bear market lows. Bitcoin had a higher low, but that's not an altcoin. So with 38% losses, and just another little quick decoding thing of a piece of information is on March 12th, I believe Bitcoin lost about 38%. And then on March 13th, the following day was the day the lowest prices came in, and it went down to $3,800. So these 38s are kind of interesting. We perceive that as 3 8s or 888. Amazing. 888 giving us 24, and 24 is the logo of Jupiter. And we know that Jupiter has a huge role in all of this through crypto. It ties back to XRP because X, or the logo of XRP, is the 24th letter. And that ties back to Jupiter. And I've showed you this with Ripple giving us the code in Chaldean 27, and that 27 coming back to Jupiter 27. And remember, XRP gives us the 15, guys, in Chaldean. That's massive, right? It also gives us the 22, and we're in the 22 year right now. Also in the Hebrew year is the 5782, which reduces down to 22, and then XRP reduction, full reduction, is 22, and this 15 tying back to the new variant. So I think this is the year for XRP, by the way. Like, I'm almost certain of it. Like, a lot of people were really pushing this idea of 2021 being the year for XRP, and I was declining that. I was saying that it would either be very early of 2022 because of alt season and what happened in the last bull run, or I was thinking it has to be sometime in the year of 2022. This 23 year is definitely going to be that's the one that's really interesting for me, but one step at a time, right? I just wanted to bring up this XRP with the 15 Chaldean connection, and let's get back on track. So that 3-8 idea was pretty profound. You know what I just shared about how on the 12th it lost 38%, and on the 13th it came down to $3,800. Amazing. So now this date of the 12th, again, tying to the 7th, or tomorrow, the 7th day of our year, 666 days. So keep that in mind tomorrow as well. And then, of course, the 13th of March being the day that the cryptos bottomed, right? And this was the date that we saw everything really drive down to the downside. And in the same day, most coins actually ended the day green. So it was a huge fake out. But this was the pivot date in the market, and it's in the numbers as well. And let me break it down a little further. March 13th, 2020, it was the 73rd day of the year, and 73 is the 21st prime number. 21 comes back to Saturn, and we know that Bitcoin has 21 million coins in supply. Saturn is Satoshi Nakamoto, right? So this 73rd day of the year, 21st prime, textbook also, it was the 56 date numerology, and 56 is the ticker symbol of Bitcoin. And also this 56 comes back to Isis, and Isis, or the moon, Luna, runs the market on the lunar cycle. It is the feminine energy that's balancing what's going on here. And we know that the lunar cycle, not only new moons and full moons, but also eclipses play a huge role in this market. It is undeniable, okay? So that 56 connection is definitely something to consider there. And then look, remember, we see right here with Isis giving us the 8 in Chaldean, and the 8th day of the year ties to all of this because it will be 666 days since Friday the 13th, March 13th, 2020. Huge, okay? Take this seriously because we have one more connection. It is the 15 date numerology, right? And that 15 coming back to the new variant, 15th Greek letter, all right? This is why in my last video that I released, I shared January 5th as the big date, and then January 8th as another date. And we could use that as a window of time, perhaps, to consider the worst of it, right? And I think perhaps what we're seeing with fear and greed, index is giving us some ideas here as to how fearful things have been getting, but perhaps it can go lower. Actually, let me check fear and greed index just for quickly see where it's at. Gotta love how I do this while I'm filming. Oh my god, it's 15. Of course it's 15. Why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be 15 that was posted on the 1-5 date numerology connecting back to... Oh my god. See, guys, it's all in the code. It's all in the code. It is undeniable. Okay? So anyways, getting back on track, the 13th of March, Friday the 13th, we know Bill Gates stepped down from Microsoft, started, going on his path of jabs and doing all of the great humanitarian philanthropy work that he uses to be tax liability free. That's a joke. But anyways, March 13th, Friday the 13th, connected to January 8th, giving us 666 days with the 15 date numerology. It's definitely something that I'm paying attention to, okay? So that still stands. That date is probably going to be something. Now, I believe that most people want to know a little bit about like what's going to happen like in regards to prices, which I'll get into with the TA, but I think also people want to know a little bit more about what's going on with this energy and how we're going to transition out of it, because after this, well, that's all the 666 connections starting on the 9th. But remember, it's the 1-9. And what was the big world event turned into on March 13th, 2020? C-word 19. So keep that in mind, guys. All right. And it's the 52. That 52-25 connection we've shown time and time again, coming back to BTC. I mean, right there, you can see ISIS gives us 52, BTC giving us 25. There's a lot of connections here. And the 2 5s is perceived as 55. Again, coming back to Satoshi Nakamoto with the 55. And that 55 hasn't been treating us that well lately, unfortunately. So with that being said, the 9th, and perhaps as we transition out of the 9th, that's when things will kind of like level out a little bit. And my thoughts here are very simple. The 10th into the 11th are showing us big numerological dates. So the 10th is the 1-1-222 date, and the 11th is the 1-1-1-222 date. And the number 11 is always about sort of restarting. And the number 22 is always about resetting, and they're different. They're different energies, but more of which, perhaps through the 10th and the 11th, we have a reset, like a restart-ish kind of vibe, and then we move into Mercury retrograde on the 14th. So I believe the worst that we're going to see is between now and the 9th, and then on the 10th, 11th, we start to like sort of figure it out, potentially have a bottoming and a start of a reversal moving into Mercury retrograde on the 14th. Of course, we have the 12th, 13th kind of like helping us through that transition. I mean, that 55 date numerology is definitely something to consider. The 13th and that transition date could be big because it's that 56, and that 56 again giving us same date numerology across the board back to March 13th of 2020. You could see it right here: 56, 56, 2020, 11, 11, 36, 36, 9, 9. So, I mean, definitely a really interesting time in the market. And that was why my last video, I called it, "This is an important week." It wasn't clickbait. It was serious. It has everything to do with the date numerology, the Gematria, and all these numbers. But then that transition of Mercury retrograde, we'll have to see how that all plays out. So if I could give any, just short information based on the code, solely on the code, the worst of it will probably be between the next 3 days, 3 or 4 days. And then as we get through to this transition of Mercury retrograde, perhaps things start to cure itself, and we have a little bit more of an idea of where this market's going to be headed in the short term. And this fits in very well with the narrative that I shared back in December. Once things started going against us, I shared that I think January is probably going to be a boring, sideways, choppy, of course it's bloody in the short term. It's only the first week of January, but when we go to February and zoom out to what happened in January, we might be ending up with pretty much just a choppy, sideways basing structure for the whole month of January, which is very similar to what happened back in the summertime of June, July. where we had the two back-to-back eclipses of May and June, and then we had those full moons in May and June were bloody, and then we recovered through that. And for us, that would sort of be like recovering through the month into March, basically. So anyways, there's a lot to be said with this, but what I would consider is that perhaps this Mercury retrograde is going to play a big role in our reversal. So I will actually be making a post later today for Patreon discussing a chart that I've made up, which has been showing us the historical movement around Mercury retrograde for the past couple of years, and how we could consider that as part of our analysis with more of the date numerologies to be sharing for next week and the following week. So for anyone who wants to have access to that, that will be an exclusive post that I make later today for the Mastermind community members of Patreon, which is at patreon.com/watersabove. So be sharing that information later today. But I mean, how amazing is that the fear and greed index was 15 on the 1-5 date? Just absolutely crazy. So let's get into the TA. Now, I think the thing that most people want to know right now is, well, when is this red over? Like, what is the bottom? And I'm just going to quickly go over this hash ribbons indicator, which is something that I brought up quite a while ago, actually. I brought this indicator up in my Mastermind course around probably October of 2020. So that was all the way back here when Bitcoin was literally like less than $15,000. Is when I showed this indicator. So this is by no means something new to my work. I just don't go over it too often because the buy signals take a while to flash. So the last time we had a buy signal before the recent one was back in literally December. And then we had one come up in August timeframe, which was amazing to see that happen, because if anyone remembers who's been following my work since back in April and May, once we had this bigger correction from the back-to-back eclipses, we saw a little bit of a fake out, and then I was very adamant about keeping at the lower 30K region through the full moons of June, July, and that is exactly what happened. And then I also said far in advance to expect a relief rally through the month of August, which ends in September, and that is precisely how it played out. So from this bigger dump, the two back-to-back eclipses, bull trap down to the lows, both full moons, recovery through August, topped out in September on the day of Shemitah, and then having the full moon correction. This played out to the T, and the other key piece of information was calling a new all-time high for Bitcoin to come in before November, and that's exactly what happened. We saw Bitcoin break into a new all-time high in late October, and that was all because of what's happened in prior price action. All of those calls were not only utilizing Gematria Numerology and Astrology, but they were also looking back at how the performance of Bitcoin was in the two cycles of 2017 and 2013. Now, we got thrown a curveball in November. That's where we're starting to like kind of recover and figure out like what's going on here since the two back-to-back eclipses that we got in May and June. Or sorry, in the December timeframe and the November timeframe, and that was kind of what happened back here. You could see also that the structure that we're getting is very similar. When we have a big dump, we tend to have a bull trap, which comes into a further correction to the downside. So we had here, we had a big dump, and then we had a little bit of bullish momentum, rejection down to fill this wick, just like we did back here. May 19th, we had this huge wick, then we played around, chopping sideways, bull trap came down to fill that wick, and we actually fully filled that wick with all of these daily closes. So it wasn't just like a single day that we came down to fill that wick. We actually took some time to get out of it. And that was why I was exposing that I do anticipate January to be sort of like a choppy sideways experience. And I know the Fed spoke a little bit yesterday discussing, interest rates and tapering and all that jargon. And that was all about the month of March. So if they're pre-pricing this in early, that's kind of good, like if the market makers are trying to just rip off the Band-Aid, that's actually something we should welcome. And I brought this up too about talking about the March crash. I know it was like insane to live through, but all things considered, if you go from the day of the crash down to the full recovery, pretty much of the lows, it took about 50 days. So I know there was like 3 days of like mayhem and it sucked. But after that, it pretty much recovered back to where it was before it fell. And then, if we take from the highs of the bull trap down to the full recovery, I mean, you're looking at about 100 days. And I know that's not what people want to hear, but this is how markets work. It drains out the players And it's the players that are in it for the long game that win. It doesn't matter about timing the market or any of that shit. Nobody should want to become an investor for just a year. An investor should be a lifelong practice. You learn charts, you learn all this esoteric stuff, but the biggest thing everyone needs to learn is emotions. Emotions and how to be here for the long game. This is something that a lot of people didn't consider, but if you threw $5,000 in Dogecoin or Digibyte, 5 years ago, today you would be sitting on multi-millions, and that would be after both Digibyte and both Dogecoin have had their recent corrections. Both coins are looking horrible right now, but you can see how the long game is on your side in a nascent asset class like cryptocurrency. So what I'm trying to say right here is the black swan that we had of 2020 in March, of course, like there could have been Gematria Numerology to expose when that was coming. I mean, I didn't have a YouTube channel back then. I wish I did. That would have been so cool to track all of that stuff happening and to see who made it through that crash and the gains to come after it. But anyways, I didn't have a channel back then. I started my channel pretty much back in March of last year. And now that I've paid enough attention to the markets and studied them enough, I see how the sentiment works, and I really completely understand now what are the mechanisms moving this market, and I could prepare myself mentally for whatever to happen. And managing that greed and fear is such a skill. It's probably the most sophisticated skill in the entire aspect of investing and money in general. All money management, all things that have to do with economy, etc. So with this chart being up, I do want to expose that the way that it works is you have this buy signal indicator that flashes, and you want to look down to your daily lows before the buy signal flashes. And the daily lows are confirmed when they're a higher low followed by new high prices. So this right here was the official low before the buy signal flashed on the hash ribbons indicator. And this hash ribbons indicator shows us that we do not close below daily lows before the buy signal flashes ever again. Now, that has only been invalidated one time out of about 18 to 19 iterations of this signal. And honestly, you could call it about 14 to 15 times because most of them were like doubles where it flashed blue twice really quickly. But the point of what I'm trying to say is when this blue buy signal flashes, not only do we typically follow it with new all-time highs, it's the lows before it that we have that are not being revisited with closures below. So we could back test them. And this is where I want to share you the blood in the street scenario. So right now you can see where we're trading is pretty much around the full moon lows of Rosh Hashanah. And we're within the wick lows and filling them. Now, the two big things to look out for would be $38,000. So just, you could write that down, pause this video, write down $38,000. We do not want to close dailies below that. And then on the weekly, you have this red line right here, which is the chart in the background is the logarithmic growth curve chart. This red line, we do not want to be closing weekly candles below that. And right now that sits exactly at around $40,000. So with that being said, we have our weekly close in 4 days? We want to be above 40. I know it would look like shit to have a daily close or a weekly close at 42 or something like that, but really basing around this red dev line, which I believe is the 236 dev line of this logarithmic growth curve chart, that's about where you want to hold support. So with that being said, it would pretty much be back testing the lows of September. Now, that would be a key area to hold the 40K level, because after that, it's really looking bloody. So with that being said, we can flash as low as 37, get bought up and have a daily close above 39, and then have a weekly close above 40, and just call that the flash fake out bear trap like we got back here. Okay, because we saw that bear trap, we slowly, arduously moved into it, and then look at what it followed with. It followed with a 70-80% move for Bitcoin, which, by the way, this move for Bitcoin facilitated alt season in certain coins. Like we saw Terra Luna, we saw Solana, we saw a bunch of coins during this fake out create massive liquidity injection for some altcoins. So I'm just letting you know. because we've seen fear and greed index get to as low as like 8, as low as 9 back in the pandemic starting in March of 2020, that's a sign that, could they bleed us out a couple more days into January 8th, like I've, showed you in the decode with the 666 days of going back to March 13th, which was the lows in the crash? Yeah, of course they could. And now we just want to look for those technical levels to hold. So this is the blood in the streets target is around 37 to 38K. And then on closures, it's really 40K that we need to hold. If this gets broken, now the last area we have is this area right here around 30. So that would be a whole brand new story. 30K is something that most people are not anticipating at this time. It does align with the bottom of the logarithmic growth curve, but pretty much into February. So that would be a very weird start to the year. Bitcoin is very interesting in regards to January's, because historically we've seen January through the 8th of January is typically okay. We've seen it be a good time frame, and now it's the complete reverse. But the one thing I can say is this transition of the 21 year, which Satoshi Nakamoto had his 45th birthday into the 46th birthday, and then we saw the year end with the yearly candle at 46K. That's a sign, that they're manipulating these numbers accordingly. So I'm just being open-minded to how all this goes. And if we do come down to 37 or 38, that would also be in alignment with what I shared to you before with, remember the pandemic? When March 12th came around, Bitcoin lost 38%, and then on the 13th, it went down to 3,800. How ironic would it be if on the 8th of January, we went down to 38,000 and then got recovered? I mean, that would just be crazy. It would be like a textbook proof of numerology running this market for cryptocurrency, at least. So anyways, let's continue. We have our downside target if there's blood in the streets, and then we have our main area for our weekly close coming up, 40K. Need to hold that level. If we do not hold that level, then we will invalidate a level that we've seen only be invalidated one time, and then we would start kind of giving this hash ribbons indicator less praise because it's been so great since. And now we would just have to go back to the drawing board. I mean, even though 2 iterations of it failing is still an insane hit rate. So we would just have to see how quickly it would take to recover off of that, because if we go back to what happened in the pandemic of March 2020, we remember how quickly we recovered off of that. Now that we're looking back, it only took about 50 days. Meanwhile, this crash that happened, I mean, if we want to call it a crash, it took longer. It took about 160 days to recover back to the prior highs of the bull trap before the dump. So just be considerate of that. When they rip the Band-Aid off, it's fast, it sucks initially, but it's actually kind of the best thing because it resets the market. And remember, those lows that we got on those altcoins back in March of 2020, that was what gave the ability for some of these coins to make tens of thousands of % gains. It was because they shook out as many players as possible, emptied all these coins onto the market. The New World Order took the coins, and then they just drove up the market with fake liquidity through stable coins and all this money printing by the Fed and the central banks. So anyways, I want you guys to be aware of this indicator and how great it is. It's nothing new here on this channel. Again, we've been talking about it for pretty much a year in my work, but it's something to definitely consider now that we're starting to see the price move to the downside. So keep that in mind. It's called Hash Ribbons Indicator. It's free if you want to add it to your chart. Now, let's get back to the analysis on the daily. We have the 382 is pretty much exactly where we're trading at now. That was the level that I told you guys about in my last video. I was saying if we're going to move down, it's probably to this 382 fib, which is between 40 and 43K, and 43K is the main area to hold because that was the area that we were seemingly holding and getting rejected back on the full moon of September. And that kind of stuff is something that I always keep in my mind when I'm looking for technical levels. And then of course it is part of this wick fill that is always possible after we have a big liquidity event like we've seen back here, which again has a similar iteration because it had to deal with a dump, a huge dump, and back-to-back eclipses. Also, from this date of the 4th of December over to today, that is 33 days. Again, that 33 number, huge. So this next couple days could be the end of this huge bearish momentum. And then what we could be seeing, and I'll share this idea with you right now, is perhaps an inverse head and shoulders. Like, let's just say, yeah, we move to 41 to like bull trap, and then we come up here. I'm not showing you with the time recovery, but just the idea here that it looks like this. So we have our left shoulder head, and then we have our right shoulder, inverse head and shoulders, and this would have a measured move from the neckline around the 618 fib down to about, let's just call it fair at 42.4. We move that up, measured move brings us somewhere to 60, and that makes perfect sense. 60 has been the line in the sand for the macro closures, okay? So that would trap us slightly below the 888 fib and slightly above the 786 fib, and then that would be an area to hold, because once you start closing dailies above that area and you hold it, that's typically where you recover to new highs. But it is also an area where at this time we could consider a bull trap to be the end of the bull run. This move right here into 60K can really do some good things for the altcoins. So I'm just being open-minded to this could be the short-term, this could be the all-time high for Bitcoin at 69K. We just have to see how it recovers off of that, take it one step at a time. But until then, if we do recover in this fashion, where we have this inverse head and shoulders move into 60, which could take until like mid-February, that could potentially bring an alt season for particular altcoins that have yet to have that alt season. So I'm talking about things like XRP, Band Protocol, Chainlink, these coins that have been beat down, Digibyte, Dogecoin. Those are the ones that are going to have the alt season. Probably not Solana, okay? Probably not Terra Luna, probably. So this is just something to keep in mind. If this move happens, I do anticipate a bullish momentum for the altcoins, and it would be a very good time to start de-risking Bitcoin in the event that we do get rejected off of this area and have a dead cat bounce. That would be moving into 60, rejection into new lows as low as 30K. And that would be something that's very possible based on how Bitcoin has behaved in the past. And then there's always the hopium scenario of this was just a short-term consolidation, shaking out leverage to continue the bull run into late March, into April, which I still believe is highly probable. I still have a feeling that we will see a six-figure Bitcoin in the year of 2022, probably before the month of May. That gives us a big time frame to recover. I'm not being bullish right now. I am sharing just some of my intuitions right now, but for the most part, this level and the TA that I shared with you before, it's something to keep in mind. If we start getting down to the 37-ish area, then I do not anticipate six-figure Bitcoin anytime soon. So I hope that all makes sense. I hope you guys are filled in on all the information. I mean, honestly, at this time, there's not really a whole lot to say about Ethereum and everything else. All of those price targets were pretty much met. Like I was telling everyone, in Ethereum, if we saw Bitcoin start to break down to 42, to expect the 618, right? And that's exactly what happened. We went down to 33,000. Pretty much on the nose, 3,300. And I was telling you, that's the area you want to look out for. So again, from my last TA that I shared on ETH, that has been fulfilled. Now, if we do not hold that level, that's where we start to consider this area right here, the 2,700 area. That would be like Bitcoin coming down to the 37K area. 37, 38, we would anticipate ETH to pull back to that area. It just works all in harmony, guys. Like, you don't really have to overthink it. Now, another thing that's interesting about the 15 connection with XRP, remember I was showing you how the new variant is the 15th Greek letter and XRP is the 15 in Chaldean, and we've seen this move come, and now XRP is trading around the 77 cent area, which was the 49s, and yesterday was giving us the 49, or today is giving us the 49 date numerology again. I mean, is that coincidence that we're getting 77? 7 sevens goes back to 49. And then also this 76 area is huge for XRP because we have that showing up in Ripple, 76. Okay. So also today is Thursday, the day of Jupiter, Jupiter is the 27 in Chaldean, just like Ripple is 27 in Chaldean, could be part of what we're experiencing with XRP. XRP is tied to Jupiter. So holding these levels would be great, but like I told you, if we see Bitcoin move down to the 42, 43 area, we should expect 70 cent or so for XRP. And then the next level is that wick fill. And this wick was much more extreme on certain exchanges than others, but just keep in mind that that 65-66 cent area is possible for XRP depending on how Bitcoin acts. It's all going to move in harmony. So if Bitcoin moves down to 38, 39K, you can see ETH moving down to 2,900, 2,700, and then you'll see XRP move down to like about 66, 65 cents. Okay, so those are our downside targets in the event that the next 2 days are bearish. Again, this is all tying back to the 666 days since these big crash dates back in March. And with that being said, upside targets right now are not really of our concern because we need to make a basing structure in this market. And right now we're just a falling knife. So we need some time to base out. And I would not be surprised if we start to recover into that Mercury retrograde time frame. So again, later on today, I will be making a post with a Mercury retrograde chart. Also a little bit of a firmament analysis to go along with that. And I will be sharing some of my outlooks onto how next week and the rest of this month's going to play out for the Patreon supporters of the Mastermind community over on patreon.com/watersabove. I appreciate every single one of you. I hope you're having an incredible week. I know the market's been down. Just be calm. It's all good in the hood. Try to stay in high spirits. I know it's hard when investments are going against you, but it's always when it's the bloodiest and most fearful in the market that you want to start acting the opposite way. Okay? That is basic investment 101, investment thesis 101. So enjoy the rest of your day in the Matrix. Much love.